Yes, the cultural part is a very important part. Aboriginal culture in Australia is one of the oldest culture in the whole world. It's known for many, many thousands of years. And it was always stated back in those early days when they were creating the world is that the first two Aboriginal people came from the earth, and they came out of a cloud of dust, and that's how they were formed. So it's very interesting history, you know, and when we talk about creating the world, there was birds here, then there were cockatoos. And the Father above asked Mother Earth, could she send up two cockatoos, white cockatoos? And she done that. And when she sent them up to him, when he got them, he turned one into a morning star. He turned the second one into an evening star. And that's why the morning star and the evening star are so bright, because of the whiteness of the cockatoo. What we mainly here today for is to talk about some of the scarred trees that were removed from Wallamore sewerage pit to make way for the new pits out there, and they were transported in here to be replanted, and that's what and I had to accompany all trees when I transported them in here, and the trees that are here behind me, one of them weighed 17 tonne, the other one weighed 14 tonne when they was put onto transport trucks. And as you can see, the size of the trees, what we call them, they're scarred trees. And these scarred trees, as you can see there, these ones, what would be shield trees. Our ancestors used those for when they were fighting, is to make shields out of them. And both of them are shield trees. The little one that's laying down on the ground, that was removed from Windmill Downs property, where it made way for a housing company. And I believe it's beautiful. While we was out there, we had to pick up a lot of artefacts and bring here too. They're stored down here in the museum, little museum at the kiosk down here. But these trees, they're quite a lot of years old. I think we estimated them that they was around about 190 to over 200 years old when they were removed. Here again we have 3 more scarred trees from the other 2 that I just talked about. This one is approximately 160 years old, and it's got a scar there that we call a shield tree. It was used as a shield when our ancestors were fighting other tribes. And these trees were removed from Wallamore sewerage pit to make way for some sewerage trenches, and I think there was around about 4 new trenches went in out there, and these trees were right alongside and they were in the way, and so we decided with the council to remove them here to Botanical Garden. Yes, and just behind me there's another tree in the centre there, and there's another one further over. But the one in the centre, that weighs around about 17 tonne. It's a lot bigger tree, and that tree would be in the average of over 200 odd years old. But as you can see in the scarred, we call that scar that was taken out of there is a coolamon tree. Now the coolamon tree were used as a carrying basket. It was also used as a basket that used to come to swollen rivers, and they'd float the babies on the coolamon, and they'd swim alongside of it. And it's also, they used to put it on the fire to melt the sap, and they used to turn up the sides, and that what gave them a bowl that would that they could carry water in. Now the third one over further, it's another tree that was around about 180 odd years old. And out of that tree, it's like this first one that I've spoke about, it's a shield tree too. And it was done exactly the same and used exactly the same as what our ancestors done in fighting. As you can see, this here tree, as I said a little while ago, that this is the Coolawon tree. And the Coolawon tree was used specially for transporting, like swimming. They used to lay their babies in and they'd swim alongside them and across swollen rivers. Also, it was used as a carrying tool, like to carry all their tools and that. But take particular notice about this here tree. It's called a Coolawon tree, but as you can see in the top corner, there's a figure of a face, and I always said it's a baby's face. You can always see the two eyes, the nose, the mouth, the chin, and there's the oval of the face. Well, talking about our culture, we've got a lot of different cultures. We have a lot of rock art, we have a lot of scar trees, we have a lot of rock grooves, and we have a lot of different rock quarries, where they used to make their tools. We have one particular place out here is one of the biggest rock quarries in New South Wales, and that's the Daruga rock quarry. And it's right on top of the hill, and it runs for around about 150 odd metres, and it's got this beautiful green rock, is what we call grey wacky, and it makes one of the best axes that you've ever seen. I have one axe that is one of the best axes that I've ever seen, and I've showed it to quite a lot of archaeologists, and they said they'd never seen a better axe than what it was. The work that went into it was really exceptionally good. And I took two archaeologists up there that worked with me over in Watermark coal mine, and when they came across and they had a look at that rock quarry, they reckon it's the best they've ever seen in the whole of Australia, and they've been all over Australia. And there's thousands of different artefacts up there, like you got flakes, you've got chips, you've got cores, you've got part of knives, part of spearheads, axes, old broken axes where they used to work them to a certain point, and if they didn't stand the pressure of where they was belting them, to break off flakes and that, to put them into a shape of an axe, well, they used to leave it lay there. And they're the ones that we find when we go out there with archaeologists. Right where I'm standing on top of the Daruga Mountain, and I'm standing on a lot of rocks that are grey wacky, and this is one of the biggest axe quarries in pretty near in New South Wales, and it runs for 500 to 600 metres. There is a lot of grass coverage at the moment, and we cannot see a lot of the artefacts, but there are hundreds and hundreds of artefacts that are scattered all over this mountain. And just behind me is a Kurrajong tree, and you probably can see in the Kurrajong tree is that it's got a marking in it, and in that marking is where they drilled a hole into the centre of the Kurrajong tree, and that's where they got their drinking water out of it. It's beautiful drinking water, they tell me, and they, instead of walking down to the rivers or somewhere, they got it out of that, and they sat underneath these trees and they dug the rocks out of a hole, and they stacked it around the Kurrajong tree where they could work it, and they made their axes, they made their knives and everything. So they knew exactly what they were doing, and but this is noted as one of the biggest axe quarries that are here. A lot of axes have been found here, and there's a lot more still under the grass coverage, and we could find a lot more, but there's a lot of flakes, there's a lot of cores, there's a lot of chips, and so it is a big quarry, and this is what Daruka Mountain is. And as I said, this rock here is a sort of a dark greenish sort of a rock, and they call it grey wacky. We've also got a lot of history about Moore Creek Mountains and the valley out there. Moore Creek Mountain has a very lot of different sites. There's borings, there's burial sites, and even when I walked from the top of Moore Creek Mountain down to the Moore Creek Valley, it was 8 kilometres when we worked it out on a walking thing for which each step. And when we came down past you used to come past the old dam, and that dam was built in 1895, and that was Moore Creek Dam that used to supply Tamworth with the water back in the first lot of water that they used to get. And we were walking down past that, and we got down about 2/3 of the way, and here was this special tree. It was called a diamond tree. Now, a diamond tree is a very sacred and very important tree to the Aboriginal people. It's a tree where you can't allow women to look at it, and it's a tree where they can put a circle around you if they didn't want to let you go straight away. They'd put an invisible circle around you, and they'd keep you there for as long as they wanted to. But the only way that we could break that circle was I'd have to pick up 2 sticks, just like clapsticks, and I'd have to play and beat them together. And then they open up the invisible circle and they let us out. But that diamond tree, it went for about 5 to 6 feet in the air, and it had these little diamonds that was in there. So neat, like if they drew the diamonds there, It was so neat. I've never seen a neater tree. I put my hands on it and I rubbed it, because an elder can do it. Just away from that diamond tree, there was this tomb that was built like an igloo. You ever see an igloo of those overseas? Well, it was like that. And at the bottom of the igloo, they had all these rocks placed so neat, built like an igloo. At the bottom, they had a little opening. I had a look inside the opening, and here was these bodies. And the tomb and the grave run back for about 7 feet, and it had rocks placed on top of them. Now, it's very scary at the time. I had my son with me. I've had a great friend with me by the name of Ronnie Knight. And I also had this lady teacher that came from Tamworth High, and she came out on many occasions with us just to have a look at what the Aboriginal culture was all about. And she was over about 30 odd feet away from me, and she was standing at this boulder, and she said to me, she said, "Nev, there's something happening to me." I said, "What's happening to you?" She said, "My heart's pounding like anything." And then all of a sudden, when she said that, I could hear her heart pounding 30 feet away. Well, I said, "You better come over here and stand next to me." So she came over, she stood alongside me, and I touched her. And then her heart stopped from pounding. So those are the sort of things that happen. I am standing at the top of Moore Creek Mountain, and behind me is the walking track that goes right down to the valley of Moore Creek Mountain. Now when we walked this, it was measured that it was approximately 8 kilometres from the top to the bottom. We walked down past the old Moore Creek Dam, which used to supply Tama with the first lot of water, and this is where they got their water from. And that dam was built in 1895. Then we journeyed on a bit further to about pretty near 2/3 of the way. We came across this tree that was a very sacred tree, and it was called a diamond tree. And a diamond tree is a very tree that sometimes the ancestors wouldn't even let you look at it. Especially with women, a woman cannot look at that diamond tree because it's very sacred to them. But sometimes when you see that diamond tree and you touch it, and they will form a barrier, an invisible barrier around you, and they can keep you in there for as long as they like, until an elder picks up 2 sticks and he beats it just like clapsticks, and then they will open that barrier. Also alongside of that diamond tree there is a burial site, a little tomb that was built just with rocks, just like the shape of an igloo, and down at the bottom there was a little bit of an opening, and you could look inside there, and there was bodies inside of that. Right at the top of that mountain, we've got this rock face that's a shape like a wave, and we call that little wave rock. The big wave rock is in Western Australia. That's over by Perth. And when I said, about the big wave rock in Perth, now the Perth Aboriginals, they used to trade with our Kamilaroi people, and they used to meet up on top of that mountain, and there was a ball ring behind the wave rock where they used to hold their ceremonies. Then our ancestors, they danced. They come from the ball ring, danced along the rock, and that's what made it a sacred rock, because it's just sacred like if you went to Uluru Rock in Northern Territory. And what happens is when it becomes a sacred rock, no Aboriginal people can walk on it. It's the same as out there, we can't walk on it. Just before Christmas last year, there was Perth people that came across here, and they were from different schools. A lot of them was principals, headmasters and all that. There was about 15 of them, I think. And they came out to Oxley Vale Public School, and they presented me with a message stick. It's a special little, I've got it over there on the table. It's a special message stick that they had to bring across here to me and give it to some of us Kamilaroi people. But it was a long walk for them. They used to travel from Perth, all walk by foot, and they came out of a little place called Woolgoolga, just up from Coffs Harbour. So just imagine how long it would have taken them to walk from Perth across the Woolgoolga. It's a hell of a long way. Today I'm here to explain what this rock means to the Aboriginal people. This is a very sacred rock where our Aboriginal ancestors have walked and danced on it, and that's what made it a very sacred rock. We call it Little Wave Rock. Big Wave Rock is situated in Western Australia around Perth, and up behind the rock there's what we call a ball ring, and that's where they used to hold the ceremonies, and they used to come down and dance along that rock, and that is why it was made a very sacred rock. Now it's just like the rock at Uluru. We, as Aboriginal people, we cannot walk on that rock. We cannot even touch it because it's so sacred. Also, the Western Australian Aboriginal people, they used to trade with the Kamilaroi people, and they used to walk through here, and they used to end up on the coast, the other side of Coffs Harbour, at a little place called Woolgoolga. And so they traded with our people, and then when they traded, they had to learn the language of the Kamilaroi people so that they could speak the language too. Just about 80 metres south of Wave Rock, we have two scarred trees. Now both these scarred trees are what we call the shield trees. Both are shield trees, and they're cut out of a white box, which is a very good sap for the bark, and that is why they cut them out of white box, yellow box, and mainly on the river they'll cut them out of red gum. In the distance behind me, you'll see that there's three rocks on top of another big boulder, and when you look at it, they've got two sides and the back, and this is what we call Granny's Armchair. Now, Granny's Armchair is a women's site, and this is as close as I can get to it. I can't go any closer, and it's also known as a punishment site. This is one of the biggest sites in the Tamworth district. This is what we call the boundary site. As you can see here, that line running straight up the centre, that separates two tribes. On this side is the Kamilaroi tribe, on this side is the Anawan side. Now, we have two boar rings. One's there on the Kamilaroi, the other one is on the Anawan side. Now this rock art is estimated around over 200 years old. And we also, you can see the arrow pointing to another site, which is situated on the top of the mountain, and that is where there is a cave and there is an initiation site there. Just about 50 to 60 metres up the ridge here, there is another little bit of rock art there that represents a circle with lines running down, and that is telling us that no women is allowed past that point because of the initiation cave, which is situated at the top of the mountain. Now these two boar rings, they were situated down the bottom on the flat, and they used to hold their big ceremonies there. They used to march when they done the initiation, they used to march them down from the top of the mountain down to the boar rings, and that's where they held their ceremonies. And they sent the young warriors out from there and into the bush to become men, and they couldn't come back unless to the elders until they proved that they were men. Now, around those boar rings there were 6 marked trees, and they represented what the boar rings and what the tribes meant. Now, when the boar rings got destroyed, those 6 marked trees were taken from there and transported to Moonbi Hall, where they stayed in the hall for 6 to 8 weeks. Then they eventually moved them from Moonbi Hall and they stored them in the museum at Sydney. And that is where those 6 marked trees are. But this, over behind this mountain, the Anawan people they had a camp just over the other back of the hill, and when they used to hold their ceremonies here, this hill was just about lit up with so many people here.